Hello. Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? Trost can't stick around, just wanted to drop by and support. I appreciate that. Thank you for stopping in, and I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Just doing some last minute prep. We just finished up, or we had our Dungeons and Dragons today, which is pretty awesome. How is the audio? I see desktop audio coming through when I'm talking, which is kind of strange. Sounds great. Okay, cool. So we'll get started in just a minute. A little low. Yeah, I've heard that before. I have a gain filter, and it is clipping. It says it's in the red. Hopefully, you can turn your local audio up a bit. As long as there's no like duplication coming through. Hey Chris, thanks for the sub. 7 months. I should have the heart emoji trigger the exclamation point heal interaction. That'd be cool. Hey Ben, thanks for the sub as well. Also 7 months. Hell yeah. Look at Toe Jam. He's breaking down. Looks like I'm getting emotes from you too. Nice. Parkour emote. Cool. All right, let's kick it off. So you may have heard the term digital garden before. I know some of the people in the chat are already experts, both in their understanding and practice. Maybe you've heard it on Twitter. Maybe you've seen it on a site you visited, or heard people talk about it by word of mouth. No prior experience is necessary. We're going to start from scratch. Just kind of rediscovering or discovering for the first time, what is a digital garden? Why should we care? Why might you want one? And what tools could you use to build one? Hey, Resource 11. Yes, that's what today's stream is all about. So I'm super excited about it. Those are the questions. The questions I just posed are, I think, kind of going to frame how this discussion is going to go. And we're going to try and answer those today. Hopefully it's going to be some sort of pairing mob research experience. So hey, Halt and Catch, thanks for the follow. So let's head on over to the code view. So I'm in Obsidian here. I figured we could take notes together as we discover things and as we research things. Another Lonely Night says, I'm new to programming. Will this be entirely out of my league? And the answer to that is not at all. We're not going to do any coding today, actually. This is more around the concept of digital gardens or content authoring on the web in ways that are kind of untraditional, especially as of late. So where did they come from? Why would you want one? And what tools are available for building a hypertext greenhouse? And I figured the best place to start, like any good programmer, is Google. So we'll start with a blank slate, digital garden, and let's just see what happens. You can see I've already visited some of these sites before, but we'll just go with the top hit here. This is a post that I've read many times by Joel Hooks, but I think it's a great place to start. It is the #1 hit on Google. So anyone who's brand new to the space, this is something they might come across. So it starts with, my blog is a digital garden, not a blog. And we're going to read some of this together and kind of let this drive our research, and we'll branch out from here. The phrase digital garden is a metaphor for thinking about writing and creating that focuses less on the resulting showpiece or blog post or tutorial or whatever, and more on the process, care, and craft it takes to get there. That sentence has a lot of great information packed into it, and it kind of forms the thesis of what a digital garden is. We'll dig into what that means in practice as we go. Yes, Tops, this post is full of great one-sentence tidbits, zingers. While not everybody has or works in a dirt garden, we all share a familiarity with the idea of what a garden is. So I paused there when I was first reading this. Is that really true? Do we all really share? Are we all aligned on the idea of a garden? Maybe not. Maybe we're not all native English speakers, or maybe we just aren't familiar with the definition. So head on over to Wikipedia, just to kind of ground us all in what a garden is, a literal garden is. So a garden is a planned space. I think planned is a very important word here. It's not just the forest that's going wild. It's planned. There is control. Usually outdoors, set aside for the display, cultivation, or enjoyment of plants and other forms of nature, as an ideal setting for social or solitary human life. And as I was saying before, this is where I got that from. The single feature identifying even the wildest wild garden is control. So we are curating, we are intervening in nature in order to create this space that is somehow useful or delightful to us being humans. In British English, they call a yard a garden. So maybe they would call it a digital yard. Yeah, digital yard. Yeah, that's possible. I think yard and garden are kind of synonymous. Cool. So this Wikipedia article goes on to talk a lot more about gardens. The etymology is kind of cool. I think that it does mention yard here. Yes. The term garden in British English refers to a small enclosed area of land, usually adjoining a building. A digital garden. Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. I am looking for a name for my next starter. Maybe I'll steal that. Hey, Prince. A digital yeet den. I love it. Okay. So we're talking about a metaphor here, right? A literal garden is for literal plants, and it's outside in the wilderness. But a digital garden is a metaphor, just like Joel says. So let's take some notes here. We've already uncovered a lot of cool stuff, especially the Yarden. So, I mean, this here, we're just going to bring it in, right? Okay, but then we also went to Wikipedia and looked up the garden definition. And there is one thing, maybe two things that we want to pull out here. I think the usually adjoining a building could be an interesting metaphor for later on, and we'll get to that. So I'm just going to write that down for later. And then we'll bring in the digital yard in because that's important. Okay, let's go back to Joel's post and keep going. A garden is usually a place where things grow. Gardens can be very personal and full of whimsy, or a garden can be a source of food and substance. We gather and work together in community gardens to share the labor as well as the rewards of a collective effort. In my short time digital gardening, this has already proven true. Some of you in the chat have proofread my articles. I have linked to your own gardens, and you have linked back to mine. Just like a community garden in the literal sense, and it's a group effort of the community to produce vegetables and fruits. It's a comparison that you can take very far from planting seeds and pulling weeds. My personal garden has a lot of weeds that need to be pulled. That's for a future stream. To tending multiple gardens that each serve an individual need or desired outcome. Like with real gardens, our digital gardens are a constant ebb and flow towards entropy. Weeds take over. So by entropy here, I believe he's referring to like the chaos that is a completely untended field or forest. Left untended, the earth will reclaim what belongs to it. The same is true for our digital gardens here on the internet. Organizing information is hard. It's very hard. We intake so much information all the time. Twitter, blog posts, courses, articles, tutorials, conference talks, streams, tweets, as I mentioned that already. So what do we do with all that, and how do we get something out of the information that we are ingesting? Joel says, I'm not a taxonomist. I don't have a formal information design background. I would assume most of us also are in that same boat. For the most part, I just wing it ad hoc and hope for the best. We're all constantly bombarded with information, like I was saying. A lot of it is really good info, but the challenge is absorbing it, applying it in the context of our lives and careers. I'm going to skip over some of this stuff. Okay, here's a good one. Chronologically sorted pages of posts aren't how people actually use the internet. And this is very true. We're not looking for, let me see all the articles written in 2019, right? We're looking for topics of interest, topics we care about, just like we kicked off this stream with a Google search using a topic. Traditional blogs are sorted chronologically and dated. So that's kind of one key difference here. Maybe we could write that down. So key difference between a digital garden and a blog is that digital gardens are not sorted chronologically. As content creators, we participate in this process with search engine optimization, while warehouse full of robot spiders crawl through our posts, devouring titles, metadata, and text to help you find what you want. Another layer of discovery is curation. If you visit the root of the site, you'll notice that you are welcomed with a small best of selection and other few topics that I wanted to surface. So this is another key point, I think, of what makes any good digital garden, or I probably should not have used the word good there, but just any digital garden. So let's go with curation. And I think we can draw a metaphor here between, have you ever seen maybe a food stand at a small farm on the side of the road? There's a large field, many acres, surrounding this small fruit and vegetable stand on the side of the road. But they pick the best and ripest fruits and veggies to display. Curation comes before a chronological list. The chronological list is still there, When you click all articles, instead of number of pages, all the articles on that page are visible. I've also got site search, which is a nice touch. I think this is another important feature of a garden. We'll organize some of this in a bit. My personal digital garden extends well beyond this domain, and by this domain, I think Joel's referring to this website that we're on right now. Twitter, Notion, Roam, Slack, Discord, and Apple Notes all represent digital plots where I tend and water ideas. So how does all of this fit together? What's the difference between Notion and Roam, Apple Notes? How do we make sense of all of these things? Is it one size fits all? Is there a prescription that we all need to follow? Or is it a bit more opinionated and personal? If you'd like to hear more about some of the technical aspects of digital garden tooling with myself, Chris Biscardi, who's in the chat, John Otender, and Kurt Kempel, we had a panel discussion about that you can watch here. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this link in to the chat real quick. There we are. Definitely encourage you to watch that talk. I was there live and it was great. So, further reading. There are two articles that really got me into thinking about this. The first is from Amy Hoy, How the Blog Broke the Web. I did read this. However, for the purpose of this stream, we're going to skip this one and we're going to go to the second one. Second article is from Tom Critchlow, titled Building a Digital Garden. What I really like about Tom's piece is his discussion of the idea of non-performative blocking in your personal space on the web. So let's head on over there and see what we can find. We need to schedule another one of those. That would be great. That was an awesome panel. I learned a lot. All right, so we're at Tom's site now. We're just kind of, no real plan. Just kind of going where these articles take us. If you remember, we started from a Google search on the top hit, and oh, what do you know? The second hit is the same article that Joel just linked us to. This illustration is pretty amazing. So I'm just going to pause here. Any thoughts, questions? Does anything sit with anyone in particular? Resonate with anyone? Let's go back to our Obsidian notes. So we learned that digital gardening is a metaphor for thinking about writing and creating, specifically one that focuses less on the resulting showpiece and more on the process. We looked up the definition of a literal garden so that we can all kind of be on the same page when we're creating that metaphor and connecting those lines between literal and figurative. We discovered a new word, the digital yarden, or the digital yeetden. It's a very important piece. The chronological idea, or Nikki says, the chronological idea always had me torn. I agree with it while simultaneously often limiting Google results to a year or younger, especially on tech topics. Yeah, so it really depends, I think. Like if you are looking for like a React specific technical topic, React has changed a lot in the past couple years. We got class components and then functional components and hooks and whatnot. So for that reason, dates do matter. However, if the topic is maybe more high level or not quite as technical, I think date doesn't quite matter as much. And I do think dates are okay. I think it's the chronological sorting and discovery that really kind of hurts the web. Dating your article, like when you last updated it, even when you did publish it, could be a fine thing to do. But it's kind of how you sort that information and display that information that should not necessarily be chronological. Does that make sense, Nikki? Halt says, Joel's post helped me start my website. Although it's in the form of a traditional blog form, I'm trying to push myself to do more lease writing. That's awesome to hear. Joel's post has definitely influenced my site a lot too. Less torn now because that makes total sense. Awesome. Glad to hear it. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, and I'll link this too. I don't know that we're going to read through this word for word like we did with Joel's. Let's see. If there's anything that, yes. So this highlighting here was not done by me, but it is very appropriate. A blog without a publish button. It's a less performative version of blogging, more of a captain's log than a broadcast blog. The distinction will come down to how you blog. Some people blog in much the same way. For me, however, blogging is mostly performative thinking and less captain's log, so I'm looking for a space to nurture, edit in real time, and evolve my thinking. I think this is a great quote to put in our notes. And we'll, of course, add the source here. So this reinforces the idea that Joel presented in his, I think, opening sentence. Focuses less on the resulting showpiece and more on the process, care, and craft it took to get there. And in different words, it's a less performative version of blogging, more of a captain's log than a broadcast blog. Blogging is mostly performative and less of a captain's log, and Tom is looking for a space to nurture, edit in real time, and evolve my thinking. Again, there's a lot of good information here, and Tom has multiple articles on this topic. But I just because I've read ahead, I want to go back to Google and get to that third result. So we're going to go over to Maggie Appleton's website, specifically the article titled A Brief History of the Digital Garden. Beautiful illustration as usual. So this post has been hugely beneficial to me. So huge shout out to Maggie and all of her amazing work. Hey Paranoid Coder, what's up? Been using Foam for a few days and really like the flow. That's awesome. I didn't really get into Foam as much as I thought I would. I've been using Obsidian and liking it. But we will talk about tooling in a bit. And I think Foam is definitely worth mentioning. So Maggie starts off with a Twitter thread. So let's just go ahead and check that out. So she has a collection of digital gardens and digital garden resources going in this Twitter thread. So this is Tom's digital garden. We briefly looked at his article on digital gardening before. If you remember this one with the captain's log, this is the same guy. And then this is what a manifestation of those thoughts looks like in practice. So he has a route called wiki or /wiki. And you can see there are some topics here. And going back to what Nikki was talking about, the chronological order, like art and books, there's just so high level of topics that we don't need dates here. We don't need this sorted by date. It doesn't really matter when he first published the art page, wiki/art. It doesn't really matter when he published the wiki/books. So they'll kind of just sit here as siblings. So we can add that to our notes. So Tom's garden. And then some remarks about it. He's got really high level topics, right? Art is very broad. It's not, there's no, watercolor art or digital art. It's just art. So that's interesting. It's also interesting that he nests everything under /wiki. I don't know if I like that or dislike that, but it's a thing. Okay, let's move on. Okay, Buster Penson's piles. So I think this is kind of just a different metaphor for, I guess, what would you call a sprout or a plant in the digital garden metaphor. I kind of think of this like every time I have a thought on a topic, I write it down on a piece of paper and I put it in the pile that it's supposed to be in. So if it was art, for example, I might write a note about art and put it in the art pile. And then as I write more notes, that pile gets bigger and bigger. That's interesting. We're going to skip that one. Of course, we have to check out Chris's site. So here, like Joel mentioned, we have curation. We have latest posts, and this could just as easily be featured posts or things I'm excited about. But yeah, we've got the curation on that /index. Then we have this garden route. So what is this all about? I'm just going to scroll through. It looks like a long list of sprouts and flowers. We also have search, which Joel mentioned he also uses. And then we have these filters. So we can filter by topic type. Very interesting. Let's keep going. So we have this layered bidirectionally linked system of evergreen notes. So what the heck does that mean? Let's see if we can find, oh yeah, I went through this a bit before and kind of struggled to find the bidirectional portion. Let's see if I can find it again. I think it's notes.handy.org. So let's try that. Chris says, I got to change latest lessons to collections on the homepage, and the /garden page will have field guides at some point in that search. Awesome. Yeah, collections are groups of lessons. A bit more substantial than an individual lesson. That makes sense. Okay, so here we are at this, what do we call it? Or what did Maggie call it? Layered bidirectionally linked system of evergreen notes. So we have like these link previews, and then as we kind of dig deeper, things are layering on top of each other. And you can see there's like this URL that's getting built here. We can add this to our notes. Maybe we should call it like features of a garden. So bi-directional links. We didn't really dive into those. If you've used Roam or Foam or Obsidian, you might know what bi-directional links are already. So we'll look at that more. But then we have this layered, still struggling with the wording here. Layered notes, we'll call it layered notes. Hey Bjorn, thanks for the follow. How are you? Thanks for tuning in. Layered notes. Just kind of a personal thing. I don't really care for this style. I kind of find it hard to consume. It's kind of overwhelming. Looks like we have like the same title even up here. No, slightly different titles. But cool, it's an experiment in digital gardening. Okay, the open Transclude UX pattern. This is pretty interesting. So let's scroll down to the example, skip to demo. So here they are including a quote from another article that I think they also wrote, yes. But it brings in a bit of context around what is surrounding this quote and gives it some kind of styling, as well as a link to the full article. So the open Transclude UX pattern, another potential feature of a garden. So we'll keep going. Okay, so bidirectional links implemented in Gatsby. So now we're kind of getting into some tooling here, not just features, but tooling as well. So let's add a H2 for tools, and we know Gatsby is going to be a tool, potential tool. Oh, what's the goal for today? I've recently been adopting Obsidian for daily note-taking use. That's a great question. So the goal today is kind of to discover what it means to be a digital gardener. What does the term mean? Why do we care? How do we do it? So we're doing some research as a mob, as a group, on digital gardening. Feel free to keep asking questions as we go. If you're tuning in late, I'm happy to recap or go over stuff we've already discussed. No problem. Inspired by Roam research. So here's a new thing. What is Roam research? A notes tool for network thoughts. Cool. We'll come back to this. Right now, just trying to keep on the path of looking at digital garden examples. And how we got here was first through Joel Hook's blog, and then we went to Tom's blog and his wiki or digital garden, and then we made it to Maggie's garden history, and we're just barely scratching the surface of this article. We started by looking at this link to a tweet collection of digital gardens and digital garden resources. Cool, I guess I can learn if I'm a digital gardener or not. I've never heard that term before now. Awesome, well, anyone can become a digital gardener. Thanks for the links, y'all. Whether you are now or want to be in the future is totally up to you. I would be happy to post these notes somewhere. I'll post them on my website. I can link my website real quick, and then I'll probably tweet a link out. later today or tomorrow with the VOD on YouTube, and then a link to the notes as well. I think I have a Twitter command, maybe. And there's my website. Maxell just linked my website. Cool, so I'm gonna pause this article here because I want to continue looking at other gardens. And I happen to know that Maggie maintains a GitHub repo with a list of gardeners. Hey Hassan, thanks for the follow. Thanks for tuning in on your Sunday, your weekend. Okay, so we're gonna add this to our list of notes. Okay, so here we have a collective of gardeners publicly tending their digital notes on the interweb. So this repo is pretty incredible. Maggie's done a lot of the work for us already. There'll probably be some duplication between notes we take today and things you find here. So we've got gardening tools, all kinds, from no code to React to Ruby and Jekyll, Eleventy, and others. We also have this concept of a private garden, and that's what Obsidian is for me today. And some other things too. So we got web mentions, which we can look at just a little bit. So there's some tutorials here on how to build a digital garden, what web mentions are, etc., etc. Philosophy and theory. So this is some of the stuff we looked at already. Right here's Joel's post. Joel then links to these two posts by Amy and Tom. Chris has a post called "What is a Digital Garden?" Well, he did at one point have the post. So yeah, this is a great. I think the link is wrong, Chris. She's linking to /garden. Yeah, digital gardeners. So the link is in chat, and then she's linking to just your garden index. Let's see if we can find it. What is a... Here it is. Yeah, so she's just linking to the wrong post. I remember this. I've seen this article before. Catching up on chat, AVH4 says, I was a big fan of notational velocity back in the day. That's a new term for me. We'll write that down. Notational velocity. But only recently have been getting back into regular note-taking and have been really liking what I've been able to do with Obsidian. Same. I'm still growing my second brain, but it's getting there. Still rough edges in the UI. I agree. It would be nice to have maybe tabs or custom ordering. I think you can only like sort by recent or alphabetical or the inverses of those. And I'd love like custom ordering based on what I care about at the moment. That'd be cool. So yeah, there's a lot more it could do, but I'm really liking it over Notion. I'm kind of in the middle of a transition from Notion to Obsidian at the moment. If you could tell me more about notational velocity, is that a word? Is that a thing? Maybe it's in that list already, but there's a guy who has publicly published his notes made with the Brain app. Cool. It looks like Kathleen has given us, oh, let me click that link on the right computer. So here's Kathleen's garden. This is a gathering of all my thoughts, digital garden style. If you haven't heard of the term before, check out this fantastic post, which we just did, so we are all up to speed. Digital gardening with MDX magic. Cool. So we're still researching, right? We're still mob learning, mob researching, and we've just seen a new term, MDX. So I don't know if MDX is a feature or a tool. It's kind of both. I guess the feature would be interactive post. We'll call it post for now, and the tool will be MDX. And I happen to know what MDX is already. But if you're not familiar, MDX allows you to use JavaScript React components right next to your Markdown, enabling some rich interactivity. So we'll get to that. We'll get to some examples of that. So Kathleen has a chronological ordered list of notes. I just want to point out that there is no necessarily canonical, this is a digital garden, this is not. So there's kind of blurry lines between what you should or should not be doing with a digital garden. I love your site, Kathleen. It's really well designed. And thanks for showing us. Okay, so we were looking at Maggie's list. Okay, we didn't even get to the list yet. So here we have a digital garden directory. So there's a ton of examples here that use different build tools. Today I'm going to focus mostly on React, and we're not going to get too deep into the tooling, or I should say the programming portion here. We're going to kind of stay at a high level bird's eye view. Maybe in the future, or maybe if you want to check out some tutorials on my site, if you want to get into the coding aspect of how we set it up. Okay, so just a couple more examples I think that are worth taking a look at. We already looked at Andy's. I think this was the layered one. So here is a TiddlyWiki one. This is the no code tool. So this is kind of cool. I've never used TiddlyWiki behind the scenes, but I created this public notebook / digital garden because I believe the only way to learn in public is to build in public. That's a good quote. So we might as well just pull that in here. And source it out. AVH4 says notational velocity is an old Mac app. Okay, cool. I really like those two words combined there. Had a very intentional and optimized UX design with a search bar and then a text note taking and supported cross article links. Super cool. That was a demo page from last week's MDX Conf talk. That was a great conference. I've yet to see any of the more recent apps have as good of a UX as Notational Velocity had. Would you mind dropping a link to that app? Does it still exist? Is it still in active development? Can we download it even if it's not? So there's some words here that I really like. I was just kind of clicking through Maggie's list and just trying to get inspired and gain some perspective on the wide range of styles and tools and features that digital gardens have. So I'm just going to read some of this out loud. Our natural fear of being judged leads most people to build, learn, and think privately. But seeking validation should not be the goal of learning in public. Instead, the goal should be to tap into your network's collective intelligence to create a constructive feedback loop. That's really powerful. I think that we kind of tend by default to be afraid afraid of being judged for the thoughts we have or don't have, just like this person says, who I don't see their name, Anne. But we're kind of working against ourselves when we do that, when we retreat inward. So instead, the goal should be to tap into our network's collective intelligence, because two brains are smarter than two, and then one. I benefit when I have access to your thoughts, and you benefit when you have access to mine. And if we all kind of work in public, we're all benefiting collectively. Pausing for chat catch up. Okay, thanks for the link, notational.net. I will add that to the notes. A few more recent clones. Cool. I'll look into that. Halt says, do you consider this page a Yarden? I do. I do consider it a Yarden. It has some weeds. I think that I could maybe do a better job of presenting some of this information. I kind of want to change the name of Notes to Garden. But yeah, this is kind of open thinking, right? Like styling frameworks. This is all I've gathered on styling frameworks thus far. There's a lot more knowledge in my head that needs to get here that hasn't made it there yet. But like, you know, this is very, very rough, right? Module resolvers, if you're familiar with the term, there's many ways to do it. You can do it with Babel, you can do it with Webpack. Why would you do it? Why would you not do it? There's a lot more that could go here that just hasn't made it there yet. So I would say this is a seed that has not even yet sprouted. So yeah, this is the garden portion of my site. And if you recall earlier, we read the Wikipedia article on the literal garden. And I pulled something out that I said I'd come back to, which is that gardens or yards usually are adjoining a building. So we can kind of see that here with my site. We've got this building, right? Here's like the main building. And it's got some nice windows, maybe some stained glass windows, some pillars, some big double doors out front. Okay, but then in the back, we've got the yard or the garden. I kind of think that's a cool metaphor. That's all I got on that. Okay. Continuing to look at just inspiration of others' gardens. Here we have Sean Wang, who has a very colorful, interesting site. But here is his /writing. And we can see that he kind of nests everything under this /writing. And so that could be a differentiating feature of some gardens. I like everything to be top level. But not everyone does that. Some people do /notes, /garden, /writing. So I'm just kind of skimming here to see what's going on. Thanks for the host, AVH. So he's got some what looks to be MDX here, but maybe not, since I think he's using Sapper. I'm not sure. But he has web mentions. So we talked about this as being a feature or potential feature. Of digital gardening. Here's Chris's site, another Tiddly Wiki site. I guess Joel's is built in next. That's pretty cool. So yeah, we're not going to go through too many more of these, but I do think this is an awesome resource, invaluable resource for getting into digital gardening. Nikki says, I'm reading an article by him right now. Totally different scroll bar, though, probably browser related. That's pretty funny. Halt says, I might try to add a section like that on my Hugo site. Awesome. So yeah, Hugo is another possible tool for building a digital garden. The world's fastest framework for building websites. So we can add that to our tools, right? Okay. So back to Maggie's article. So we made it through this tweet thread, or most of it, and then we looked at the GitHub repo, and we got a wide range of different gardens who all have different approaches and thoughts and opinions on how their garden should be and what works for them and what doesn't. Okay, the term digital gardening is not new. It's been floating around for over 2 decades, though it's passed through a couple of semantic shifts. We're going to skip over some stuff here. The early gardens of hypertext. The earliest mention of digital gardening I've found at least partially aligns with the way we're currently using it. So this website actually still exists, which is kind of wild. Definitely takes you back. And I very much respect Maggie for doing all of this research. It is very cool to see the origin story of the term. And I think understanding some of the origins help inform our modern and current opinions and personal opinions on what digital gardening is. It's less about building personal internet spaces and more of oh, there's a typo here. Manifesto on user experience flows and content organization. So there's definitely more that I want to point out here. Some of this I find a little less interesting. This is kind of cool. Digital gardening, i.e. faffing about, syncing things, defragging, like pruning for young people. But yeah, the concept of digital maintenance and cleaning up one's digital space in general, I think is very interesting, a great metaphor. I have an initial effort at a digital garden, but like we kind of looked at and I explained, there's weeds growing and it needs some pruning. It needs some cleanup and some tending too, as I'm sure most of our sites do. So there's some more examples of some similar, cleaning up of your digital space. And that kind of brings us back to the definition of garden, control. And if you let your garden go, it will eventually need the weeds pulled. Much like Animal Crossing. Okay, so here we're getting into some more really good stuff. Garden streams and cowfields metaphors. At the 2015 Digital Learning Research Network, Mike Cowfield delivers a keynote on The Garden and the Stream, a techno-pastoral. It's a really catchy title. I've watched his talk a couple times, and it's really cool to see how he thinks about it. And this was in 2015, so that's 5 years ago, and we're here still. 14 of you are here talking about it with me, and there's plenty of other people kind of championing the digital garden. So I think this talk had a lot of influence on where we are today. So I'll put this in the chat. It is kind of long, 50 minutes. But hey, if you're like a podcast type person, I don't think that the visuals are quite necessary to get the point across. He does a great job explaining his thinking on what he calls federated wikis, which is a very kind of similar principle or paradigm as digital gardening. He even draws some of the same metaphors, I think, near the end. Yes. So here we have a garden, right? So there's some great quotes in here. We're not going to listen to the whole thing, obviously, right now. Can put this in our notes too. So as Maggie says here, it later becomes a hefty essay. This is also very worth the time. There's some great quotes in here. So this is kind of the distilled or cleaned up version of that keynote, that YouTube video. For the past year, I've been experimenting with another form of social media called federated wiki, and it's radically changed how I think about online communication and collaboration. So he doesn't care too much about the technology or the tooling, at least not in his essay here, though I do find that very important. That's probably not really the focus of this stream. But maybe a future stream it will be the focus. And we have been taking some notes on tooling. I do think like having an idea of what your options are, what kind of features might you want in your garden, and what tools support that. Those are all very important questions. Without going too much into what my federated wiki journal is, just imagine that instead of blogging and tweeting your experience, you wikied it. And over time, the wiki became a representation of the things you knew, connected to other wikis about things they knew. That's awesome, is it not? So when I see an article like this, I think, wow, I didn't have much in my wiki about any topic. In this case, it's gun control. This seems like a good start to build it out, and he makes a page. So if there's a topic that interests you that doesn't exist yet in your digital garden, you can make a page. And like we saw in some of my own notes, there's a topic that interested me, which, or here's an example, meta tag validators. When this note first started, it was private, and I had two things. I had the Twitter and the Facebook validator. As I saw people ask about it and show me meta tag validators that I hadn't heard of, I added to it, and eventually it made it into the notes on my site. Where were we? Oh yeah, we were reading the essay. So yeah, this goes on to, dive deeper into how he kind of builds up his sprouts into evergreen posts. Definitely worth the read. Let's head back over to Maggie's garden history. Cowfield makes it clear digital gardening is not about specific tools. It's a different way of thinking about our online behavior around information, moving us out of time-bound streams and into topological thought gardens. That's a great quote. I wonder if Maggie accepts PRs. I would be happy to fix some typos. So while this topic is not about specific tools, we can't ignore that, right? The tools do definitely matter, and they matter a lot. In my experience, I prefer to use React. I prefer to use MDX. That's not the only way. As some of you mentioned, there's other options like Hugo, Zapper, etc., etc. But like, if you're convinced, hey, I want to create a digital garden, or I want to become a digital gardener, the tooling is something that must be considered. So I think that's what I'm working towards. I probably should have prefaced some of this before with the fact that Colby Fayok has invited me to give a talk at a conference, and this stream here and the stuff we're talking about is kind of going to fuel what that talk is about. I think the goal will be to do a more distilled, smaller version of what we've talked about in the past hour, and then also get into the tooling. It is a React conference, so like a brief overview of what digital gardening is and why it matters, and then do a bit more on the tooling side, with a focus on React. I think I have my abstract written somewhere. I do. One moment. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this abstract out loud since I ended up bringing it up. So, hypertext thinking, building personal knowledge bases in public is the title. And then the abstract, writing down what you know helps you learn and retain knowledge. Building your own model of a domain can generate new meaning and new understanding, yielding insights that you may not have had otherwise. React enables digital gardening by removing friction. That's an important piece of, well, we'll get to that. By removing friction, giving us tools for interactivity, MDX, and much more. Let's talk about the defining features of a digital garden and how React plays a role in our writing and knowledge building. Any criticism, thoughts, opinions? Does it sound like a talk you would care to listen to? Which conference is this for? This is for React Global. So my abstract was approved, but the slides are due in a couple days. And I've been working on that in private. This stream is kind of a manifestation of my research thus far. And then step 3, I suppose, would be to turn this into slides or a coherent talk. Hey, Horatio, good to see you. I haven't talked to you in a while, man. How you been? This would actually be my first ever conference, so I'm hoping that it all goes well. And yeah. Hey, not a problem. Not a problem at all. The VOD will be up on YouTube tonight or tomorrow. We are just talking about digital gardens and building some notes together. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Prince. Yeah, I hope so. It's all live streamed, so I'm not having to get up on a stage. It'll probably feel kind of like this, except for the fact that I can't make as many mistakes or put up the be right back screen. A bit more planned. Nope, not pre-recorded, has to be live. That was a question that a talk that I'm giving, yes. So here's the conference talk. We got the title, Hypertext Thinking, Building Personal Knowledge Bases in Public. And then the abstract, which I won't read again. You can read it. I'll leave it up for a sec. I guess in summary, it's like, how does React influence personal knowledge bases built in public, aka digital gardening? And what role does React play? Where does React fit in? How has React made an impact on digital gardening? What tools might I use to digital garden if I'm a React developer? Okay, we're back to Maggie's article. We're almost to the bottom, and I think that's about where we'll call it, but let's keep going just a little bit longer. Caulfield's precious insight was that we have become swept away by streams, the collapse of information into single-track timelines of events. The conversational feed design of email inboxes, group chats, Twitter, etc., are only concerned with self-assertive immediate thoughts that rush by us in a few moments. And that's not inherently bad, Maggie writes, and I agree with that. I get a lot of new insights, new knowledge, new ideas from Twitter. But where does everything go after that? Twitter is a force multiplier for exploratory thoughts and delightful encounters once you learn how to swim in its currents. Great metaphor. But streams are fleeting. Right? They are not designed to accumulate knowledge. But that's where the garden comes in. The garden is our counterbalance, Maggie says. The garden is the web as topology, the web as space. It's the integrative web, the iterative web, the web as an arrangement and rearrangement of things to one another. It's beautifully written. Okay. There's a few key pieces. Digital gardening is low friction, and I kind of tangentially mentioned this when I was reading my abstract. React, for me, removes friction to digital gardening. Through the tooling and my experience with it, I am able to relatively easily publish a new seedling, a new sprout that I can then tend over time. Tending it shouldn't take more effort than a tweet. I'm still working towards that goal, I think. I think mine's a little bit more effort than a tweet. There is a git commit and a push. But just like a real garden, watering and clipping it is part of a daily ritual. I think that takes time to build up to. Maggie makes it seem like it's something that is required from the get-go, but I don't think that's necessarily true. When you're first starting out, it takes time, and sometimes other things get in the way, and your garden grows some weeds like my own. And that's okay. But ideally, we are watering and clipping it every day. So we're building complexity through linking. It takes the web seriously as a linked medium, hypertext, right? It leans into what the web is good at, linking. And so bi-directional linking kind of comes into play there as a very cool feature of digital gardens, though I don't find it to be a requirement. My personal garden does not yet have digital or bi-directional linking. Obsidian does, Roam does, Foam does, etc., etc. And maybe I'll add that to my garden one day. Blog posts present an established opinion. Collections of connected ideas don't know what they think yet. So blog posts do know what they think. They are an established opinions, but collections of connected ideas don't know. They're just like, oh, I'm just an idea, just kind of hanging out, right? And that's where the digital garden lives. our existing understanding of blogging is performative. We looked at Tom's article earlier talking about the captain's log. So I'm skipping over some of this here because I want to touch on this graphic. I think this really helps connect the dots. So we have these streams of information, chaos streams, Maggie calls them. Twitter, cozy web groups, Instagram, could be Slack, could be Discord, could be voice chat conversations, could be in-person meetings. But then what do we do with these things? So they can go into personal notes. And that's where Obsidian comes in for me. Or maybe where Notion comes in for you. Or Foam or Roam, etc. Emacs. And these are private. These are not published. But then the next kind of distilling level is the public digital garden. You can see here Maggie even highlights it in green. Learning in public. And then from here, we can create these blog posts that have an established opinion. And then a collection of posts can become books or research papers or courses or lessons. And you can kind of feed into these courses or papers or books following this kind of diagram here. And it doesn't have to be like this. You could see a tweet and go right to the blog post. Maybe you already know some things about it. Maybe you go from a tweet to a garden page and skip the private notes. Maybe you don't have private notes at all. Maybe everything is in public. I think there's all like room for interpretation and what works for you. So Maggie's site has a ton more information on implementation details, more on digital gardens. You can see here she has a post called Tending the Roam Garden, bringing bi-directional links to Gatsby Gardens. All sorts of good information that I encourage everyone to take a look at. So here's the index route of Maggie's garden. You can see it looks somewhat similar to the other gardens we looked at. If I zoom out, it might look a little better. There we go. We got the 3 columns now. But you can see some of the topics here, like they're very broad, right? JavaScript, Rust. All right, this one only has one thing so far. So here's a feature we can look at. She's got these emojis here that represent the state of a particular plant. We'll call them plants. And there's a key here that's also filterable. So we got budding, evergreen, and seedling. So we could put that in our notes. The state of a post. How much time and effort has this post received, or a page, post/page? Is it just sprouting, or has it been tended to over time, so much so that it's evergreen? We can take a look at Ben Lannon's as well. Lannon VR. He does something similar. And also shout out to Talv's Garden. He does this too. Cool. Do you have a link handy? So we can see Ben's site has the /garden, and then we've got some emoji keys. So he's using slightly different emojis. I like this tree here because what do trees do? A lot of times trees produce fruit, right? So we start as a seedling, and then we grow into a tree, and then this tree produces fruit. And what is the fruit? The fruit is the blog post, the course, the book. The metaphor, it just gets stronger and stronger. So here's Tony's blog. He's got some custom drawn, I think hand drawn by him, icons instead of emojis. But it's kind of the same thing, right? There's a little seedling, and then it grows and grows. Here's the like the middle ground. Looks like he's maybe got 4 steps. But here, this one, emojis and yarn command output. Maybe there's no book coming out of this post, but this tree is pretty ripe. It's about ready to produce some fruit. So yeah, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Nikki, for linking that. So I feel like we did a pretty good introductory dive into researching and talking about thinking in the digital garden paradigm. There's obviously a ton more we could do. We could spend all day going through each and every article that we kind of bypassed, making a very thorough collection of sources and quotes and links and videos. But I think the goal with this stream was to just get you inspired and kick off that first step. Take that first step toward digital gardening. There's now tons of links and resources that you and I have to continue researching and diving really as deep as we want to go. I think the next step would be implementation details. And that might be a stream for another day. We could look at so I'm working on some implementation details in terms of starters. So some of the features that we talked about back to Obsidian, bi-directional links, layered notes, the open Transclude UX pattern, interactive posts using MDX, web mentions, the state of a post, how much effort and time have we put into it, where do we feel like it is in terms of its life. I'm trying to distill like which of these features should be in a starter. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's kind of an opinionated thing. So knowing what's out there gives us some options to pick from, pick and choose what appeals to you. What do you like? Do you like the emoji key? Do you not? Do you like bi-directional linking, or maybe not so much? How do you want to handle your routing? I like all my routes top level, but some people like the /garden nesting. So yeah, before we close out for today, I just want to open it up and see if there's any last thoughts or questions. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope this was inspiring or informative in some way. Horatio says bi-directional linking is super important. I'm definitely discovering the power of it after my use and time with Obsidian, but it's not yet in my public garden, and I wish it was. Tony says, my garden will be under garden, but featured will end up top level. Interesting. I think I'm going to have a /garden that will be like an index. What decides if a post is ready to give some fruit? I think that's kind of up to you, right? as you spend time with a post, as you tend a post, as you water a page? Are you learning new things? Do you feel like you have something to say? Do you have an established opinion? Kind of, fluttering around in there? Do you think you could turn a group of notes or maybe a topic in your garden into an opinion? Do you have a statement to make about styled components or MDX? And can you use your garden note as source material? Chris says, the gardening metaphor taken too literally is a distraction to the actual act of gardening, in my opinion. That's a very good point. Do we need to differentiate how far along a particular topic is? Right? I don't do that. This note, not even linking to the Babel plugin, is much different than this note, where I've got some paragraphs and some cohesive thought. There is no differentiation between these two. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Chris kind of has a very small differentiation with this left border, but it's not really so public facing. Like, you don't know what this left border means unless you talk to Chris. So maybe that's more for himself than anyone else. Do the little emojis get in the way? Should the emojis be in my garden starter? Example, is this post a sapling distracts from the actual act of gardening? Indeed. Like Joel says, I don't write for you, I write for me. Yes, for the most part, that is true in my life as well. I think some of these questions are, like, they don't have right or wrong answers. It's kind of up to you to do what feels right. Maggie does have the gardening metaphor taken to a pretty extreme. Is it distracting? Personally, I do find it a bit distracting, and it's not my favorite. These emojis stand out quite a bit. It's also not super clear what this means, which is also kind of distracting. But that being said, she's one of the digital gardeners I look up to and respect greatly. Kathleen says, gardens can be chaotic rather than fully ordered, and that is the beauty of a garden. Well said. I agree with that. This list here is somewhat chaotic, that's for sure. The real quote unparaphrased was, I'm not writing to be your clown. I'm writing because I want to think about things. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great quote. So we can kind of see that illustration evolving here. Like, Maggie has the garden, but then she also has essays. Oh, there was one other thing that I wanted to go into around, there's a course around the second brain. I saw it. buildingasecondbrain.com. So I haven't done this course. I can't vouch for it. I don't really know much about the author, but there is one thing that stood out to me, and that is this. I feel like the acronym here, code, could be better, but let's ignore that for a moment. Capture, organize, distill, express. This fits into digital gardening so well. So we're capturing from Twitter, from the chaos, from our personal conversations, from the streams, right? And then those might make it into our personal notes. And then from there, we're organizing them into our gardens. So we have a page on SEO, we have a page on accessibility. And then we can distill those into blog posts and express them. I guess blog posts, it's kind of a blurry line, but we could express them in blog posts, we could express them in tutorials, videos, courses, books, essays. So yeah, the code system. There's just a lot to really get into around, digital garden is only one small piece in digital thinking. And there's all these other pieces kind of sitting around it. Like as far as private notes to personal organization systems like Para, which I may or may not have a link to the second brain, to Rome. Hey, Mr. Waffles, what's up? We're pretty much wrapping up pretty soon. Oh yes, Zettelkasten. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but that method is similar to the Para method, I think, right? It's like a different style. I haven't gotten too far into that, but I did do a brief overview, and it was really interesting. Overanalyzing what the garden has to be is friction. That's a really good point. I hope that this stream was not overanalyzing or is not kind of confusing by bringing in all these different options and thoughts and ideas. At the end of the day, just get started. Just plant that first seed and let the garden itself evolve. My personal site has changed a bunch over time as my concept and understanding of the digital gardening paradigm has evolved and changed over time. You're not going to get it right the first time, or you're going to change your mind. You're going to have different opinions that evolve over time, and that's totally fine. Removing friction is key, just like Tony says. I believe you should just free yourself to just go find your seeds and plant what you want, Talves says. Some will grow, some will die. Yes. Just fucking do it. Yes. Anyone have a link to the Zettelkasten method? Or I guess I could look it up. Knowledge management and note-taking method used in research and study. Then we also have the Para method. Projects, areas, resources, and archives. All right, ways to organize thought. I have not read this yet. Let's check it out. I need outblock on this login. All right, maybe this is a read for another time, but let's add it to the notes. Thank you. Okay. We're at about 90 minutes in. I feel like we covered a lot. I know my brain is a bit fried. So I think we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. I'm going to check if there's any other corgis live. Let's see. If I open Twitch and see who's streaming. If anyone. Looks like not really. So yeah, I think we're just going to end it here. I really appreciate the conversation, the thoughtful questions and criticism. And y'all taught me some new stuff. He talks about the memex, which is what we are all talking about, digital gardens and connecting ideas in 1945. Okay, very cool. Thanks for the pointing some interesting topics from the article, since we don't really have time to read it right now. Well, I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. I'm gonna go write some slides. Hey, Delphinex, what is a digital garden? I don't know, man, but I do know that static site generation is living. By that, do you mean it's good? Oh. Hi. So, yes, Sunshine Girls is my old World of Warcraft guild. Who, I'm sure I know you. What's your World of Warcraft name? Prison Pocket, I remember now. Yeah, there's a new expansion coming out, right? New WoW expansion coming out in October, right? That's awesome. I heard you all transferred to a high pop server too, which is great for recruiting purposes, which is probably like the biggest downfall of the guild back in the day. I currently don't really have time to play, but I wish you all the best. And do you have a new Discord, or are you using the existing Discord? Because I'm down to like hop in and chill with y'all. A bagel Discord? What the heck does that mean? Oh, new guild name. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Maybe I'll hit up Earl, or you could give me a Discord invite and I could just come chill. I can't play at the moment. Work and life is just too much to commit, but it's good to see you. Cool. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good rest of your weekend, y'all. Peace.